You are standing in a kitchen, doing something so ordinary that the moment should disappear as soon as it happens. A knife in your hand, a piece of fruit on the counter, light on the tile, a glass somewhere near the sink. Nothing is wrong. No one is in danger. Your body knows how to do this. Cut, place, breathe, continue. Then, without warning, the mind produces an image so wrong it feels like a crime. It may happen on a bridge, when your hands are steady on the wheel, and a thought flashes through you about turning the car. It may happen while holding a sleeping child, when tenderness is interrupted by an image of harm. It may happen in a quiet room, during prayer, during sex, during a funeral, during a normal conversation with someone you love. A sentence appears, a possibility, a picture, a what if. It is gone almost as quickly as it came, but the body does not let it leave quietly. The chest tightens, the stomach drops, the hand freezes, the mind turns back toward itself with horror. Why did I think that? What kind of person thinks that? Did I want it? Could I do it? Does this mean something? Would a good person even be capable of imagining this? In a few seconds, the room changes. The knife is no longer just a knife. The bridge is no longer just a bridge. The sleeping child is no longer just a sleeping child. The world has become evidence. This is the real terror of intrusive thoughts. Not only that the mind can produce something ugly, violent, forbidden, blasphemous, sexual, absurd, or morally unbearable. The deeper terror is the feeling that the thought has revealed you, that something hidden has slipped through, that the surface self, the careful self, the decent self, has been covering a darker truth. The thought arrives like a stranger, and somehow you begin treating it like a confession. But an intrusive thought is not automatically a confession. It is not automatically a desire. It is not automatically a prophecy. Often, it is a mental event that becomes terrifying because of the meaning placed on it. A piece of noise passes through the mind, and the mind, desperate to be certain of its own innocence, turns the noise into a trial. Stanley Rashman's cognitive theory of obsessions gives one of the cleanest ways to understand this. The problem is not simply that a disturbing thought appears. Disturbing thoughts appear in many human minds. The problem begins when the thought is catastrophically misinterpreted. A violent image becomes proof of danger. A taboo idea becomes evidence of corruption. A doubt becomes a moral emergency. The thought itself may last a second. The interpretation can last for years. This is where the mind becomes its own worst enemy. It does not merely have the thought. It interrogates the thought. It checks the thought. It checks the feeling after the thought. It checks whether it was frightened enough by the thought. It checks whether a lack of panic means secret approval. It examines memory, emotion, body sensation, intention, morality, identity. It becomes a detective investigating a crime that has not occurred. And because the crime has not occurred, there is no final evidence. There is only doubt. Doubt becomes the fuel. The more you try to prove you are safe, the more you must imagine the danger in order to test your reaction to it. The more you try to prove you did not want the thought, the more you must return to the thought to see whether wanting is there. The mind turns innocence into an endless task. This is why reassurance often fails. You tell yourself, I would never do that. For a second, relief comes. Then the mind asks, but how do you know? You say, I love this person. The mind asks, but what if love is not enough? You say, the thought disgusted me. The mind asks, what if the disgust was fake? You say, I am a good person. The mind asks, why would a good person need to prove this so badly? It is a room with no final door. Many people are ashamed to admit these thoughts because they believe they are uniquely contaminated. They imagine everyone else has a clean interior, a bright mind, a moral silence inside. They imagine that decent people only think decent things. So when a forbidden thought appears, they feel exiled from humanity. They do not say, my mind produced a strange image. They say, I have discovered something awful about myself. But intrusive thoughts are far more common than shame allows people to say. Human minds produce strange material. A mind can imagine falling while standing near an edge. It can imagine screaming in a quiet church. It can imagine saying the worst possible thing at the worst possible time. It can generate violent images near people you would never want to harm. It can produce sexual thoughts that disgust you, blasphemous thoughts when reverence matters to you, doubts about things you value, fears that seem designed to attack the most sacred part of your life. The mind is not a temple of perfectly chosen sentences. It is more like a storm system. Memories, fears, associations, images, impulses, warnings, fragments, jokes, symbols, and simulations move through it. Some are meaningful, some are not, and some are useful, some are garbage. But when the garbage lands on something morally charged, the person may kneel down and begin treating it like scripture. That is where suffering begins. Daniel Wegner's famous white bear experiment showed how difficult it can be not to think of something when you are instructed not to think of it. Try not to think of a white bear, and part of the mind must keep checking whether the white bear is present. The attempt to suppress the thought creates a monitoring process. The mind becomes a guard looking for the very thing it is supposed to keep out. And to look for it, it must keep representing it. This is the irony of thought suppression. If you are trying not to think a disturbing thought, you must keep asking whether the disturbing thought is gone. But to ask whether it is gone, you have to bring it close enough to inspect. The mind becomes like a person walking through a house at night, checking every room for an intruder, and by checking, never letting the house become quiet. This can turn a passing mental event into a recurring one. The first thought may be random. The second thought may be the product of fear about the first. The third may come because you are checking whether the second is still there. By the 10th, the person believes recurrence proves significance. But recurrence can also prove that you are watching too closely. A thought watched with terror begins to glow. This is why intrusive thoughts often grow around the things people value most. A loving parent may fear harming a child. A religious person may fear blasphemous thoughts. A careful person may fear causing an accident. A faithful partner may fear sexual betrayal. A gentle person may fear violence. The content is not random in the emotional sense. It often targets the place where a person is most invested in being good. That is what makes it so cruel. The thought attacks the altar. It appears exactly where certainty matters most. If you did not care about harm, the image might pass. If you did not care about faith, the blasphemy might mean little. If you did not care about loyalty, the forbidden possibility might not terrify you. The thought becomes sticky because it threatens the identity you are trying hardest to protect. This is why some intrusive thoughts are called ego-dystonic. They are distressing because they feel opposite to the person's values, desires, or sense of self. The person is not frightened because the thought harmonizes with them. They are frightened because it violates them. The terror itself can be evidence of conflict, not consent. But when anxiety is high, the mind does not trust this distinction. It says, maybe the terror is only a cover. Maybe disgust means attraction. Maybe fear means danger. Maybe the thought would not have appeared unless some part of me wanted it. The mind begins treating imagination as intention. And once imagination becomes intention, there is no safe place left, because the human imagination can produce almost anything. Paul Tsiolkovsky's work on obsessive-compulsive thinking emphasized inflated responsibility. A person may feel responsible not only for what they do, but for what they might possibly do, what they might fail to prevent, what they might secretly want, what the thought might somehow cause. Responsibility expands until it covers not only action, but possibility itself. The person becomes morally responsible for every shadow the mind can cast. This is exhausting. A person cannot simply think, that was disturbing. They must neutralize it. They must check. They must avoid. They must confess. They must seek reassurance. They must replay the moment to confirm they did not move toward the knife, did not want the image, did not feel pleasure, did not smile, did not relax, did not become dangerous. They must examine the soul for fingerprints. The tragedy is that the examination can become the prison. The person begins avoiding ordinary objects, knives, bridges, balconies, children, crowds, religious spaces, intimate moments, sleep. Not because these things are dangerous in themselves, but because they have become stages on which the mind might accuse itself again. The world shrinks around the possibility of having a thought. This is how a private sentence can become an architecture. A kitchen is rearranged to avoid knives. A route is changed to avoid bridges. A person avoids holding the baby, not because they want harm, but because the thought of the thought feels unbearable. They begin to fear not the act, but the presence of mental content. Life becomes organized around preventing the mind from producing certain images. But the mind does not become pure under surveillance. It becomes louder. Thought-action fusion deepens this trap. It is the belief that thinking something is morally similar to doing it, or that thinking something increases the likelihood that it will happen. In thought-action fusion, the boundary between mind and world becomes dangerously thin. A thought is not just a thought. It is a stain, a risk, a spell, a partial act. A person may feel guilty for a harm that never happened. They may feel as if a violent thought has injured someone. They may feel as if a forbidden image has contaminated them. They may believe that unless they perform some mental ritual, the thought might become real. The body responds not to an action, but to the imagined moral weight of a non-action. There is something ancient in this. Human beings have always feared the hidden self. We fear that our public morality is only a mask. We fear that beneath civility, there is appetite, aggression, blasphemy, perversity, madness. We fear that the mind is not a home but a basement, and intrusive thoughts appear like sounds coming from below. This is why people do not merely ask, "Why did I think that?" They ask, "Who am I?" The thought seems to open a door into identity. A flash becomes a revelation. A possibility becomes a self. The mind says, If this appeared in me, then it must belong to me. But not everything that appears in you belongs to you in that way. A cloud appears in the sky without being the sky's intention. A dream appears in sleep without being a plan. A fear appears in the body without being a command. The difficulty is that intrusive thoughts often arrive with feeling. They do not always feel neutral. They can bring shock, disgust, arousal, numbness, dread, confusion, or a terrible blankness. Then the person examines the feeling too. Why did my body react? Why did I feel something? Why did I not feel enough? The body becomes another witness in the trial, but bodies are not clean witnesses. Anxiety can produce sensations that seem meaningful. Fear can create arousal. Panic can create numbness. Hypervigilance can make neutral signals feel suspicious. The body can respond to the intensity of the fear, not the truth of the content. Yet the anxious mind treats every sensation as testimony. This is how a thought becomes a full legal system. The image appears, the body reacts, the mind interprets the reaction. Then it interprets the interpretation. Soon the original thought is no longer the only problem. The person is afraid of their fear, suspicious of their disgust, guilty about their numbness, and uncertain about their uncertainty. That last phrase matters. Uncertain about uncertainty. In many forms of obsessive suffering, uncertainty itself becomes intolerable. The person is not asking for reasonable confidence. They are asking for absolute moral proof. Proof that they will never lose control. Proof that they never wanted the thought. Proof that the thought means nothing. Proof that the future contains no danger. Proof that they are pure. But the human mind cannot give that proof. It cannot certify moral purity. It cannot guarantee every future action. It cannot remove all ambiguity from inner life. It can offer patterns, values, choices, history, intention, behavior, but it cannot produce the kind of total innocence obsessive fear demands. So the person keeps trying. They perform mental rituals. They review. They test themselves. They imagine the scene again to see if it still disgusts them. They ask others whether everyone has thoughts like this. They search online. They read symptoms. They compare. They confess. They avoid. They return. The rituals bring relief, but relief is not freedom. Relief is a short pause before the next demand for proof. This is why compulsions can feel like solutions while keeping the problem alive. Checking whether you are dangerous may briefly make you feel safe, but it also teaches the mind that the thought was dangerous enough to require checking. Avoiding the trigger may reduce panic, but it also teaches the mind that the trigger had power. Seeking reassurance may calm you, but it also teaches the mind that you cannot carry uncertainty alone. The thought becomes a king because the rituals bow to it. Exposure and response prevention, one of the evidence-based treatments for OCD, is built around a difficult principle. The person learns to encounter the feared thought, feeling, or trigger without performing the compulsion that usually follows. Not because the thought is pleasant, not because the fear is silly, not because the person should force themselves into danger without care, but because the cycle changes only when the thought is no longer treated as an emergency requiring ritual obedience. In the language of this video, freedom does not come from winning the argument with the thought. It comes from no longer building a courtroom around it. The thought can appear, and the person does not have to plead. The image can appear, and the person does not have to prove innocence for the next 3 hours. The doubt can appear, and the person does not have to sacrifice the day to satisfy it. This sounds simple from the outside. It is not simple from the inside. From the inside, resisting the ritual can feel like moral recklessness. If I do not check, maybe I am dangerous. If I do not analyze, maybe I am careless. If I do not panic, maybe I secretly approve. If I let the thought pass, maybe it means I accept it. The person becomes trapped because anxiety disguises compulsion as responsibility. But not every act of fear is responsibility. Sometimes responsibility means refusing to obey a false alarm. Sometimes morality means acting according to values while the mind screams doubt in the background. Sometimes care means continuing to hold the child, drive the road, use the knife, pray the prayer, love the person, live the life, without making fear the final authority. Acceptance and commitment. Therapy uses the idea of cognitive diffusion. Diffusion means learning to see thoughts as thoughts, not as commands, prophecies, verdicts, or revelations. The sentence "I might do something terrible" can be noticed as a sentence the mind produced, not embraced, not worshipped, not argued into silence, not treated as identity. Seen. There is a strange humility in that. The mind produces language. The mind produces images. The mind produces warnings. Some are useful, some are distorted, some are nonsense. You do not have to merge with every sentence that appears inside you. You do not have to become the thought in order to notice it. This is where the word fusion becomes important. When you are fused with a thought, you see the world through it. If the mind says, "I am dangerous," you do not hear a thought. You see danger everywhere. If the mind says, "This thought means I am evil," you do not hear a claim. You feel condemned. Fusion removes the distance between awareness and content. Diffusion creates a small space, not a dramatic one, not instant peace, just enough to say, a thought is here, a fear is here, an image is here, a doubt is here. The mind is producing the old question again. This is different from saying the thought is true. It is also different from violently trying to banish it. It is allowing a cloud to be a cloud without turning it into a god. Jung can be useful here, but only carefully. It would be dangerous and crude to say that every intrusive thought reveals the shadow as hidden desire. That would misunderstand both intrusive thoughts and the shadow. But Jung's language helps illuminate why these thoughts frighten us so deeply. They rupture the persona. They show that the mind can generate content that does not fit the clean image we want to have of ourselves. A person wants to believe, "I am gentle." Then a violent image appears, "I am faithful." Then a forbidden sexual thought appears, "I am reverent." Then a blasphemous thought appears, "I am safe." Then a dangerous possibility appears. The persona cracks, and the person fears that the crack reveals a monster. But a crack in the persona is not the same as a revelation of evil. Sometimes it only reveals that the human mind is not sterile. The demand for inner purity can become another form of violence. We do not only want to do good, we want to never think wrongly, never feel wrongly, never imagine wrongly, never doubt wrongly, never contain contradiction. We want morality to mean an immaculate interior. But human consciousness is not immaculate. It is layered, reactive, associative, symbolic, noisy, unfinished. This does not mean every thought is meaningless. Some thoughts reflect values. Some reflect wounds. Some reflect desires. Some reflect fears. Some reflect memories. Some reflect nothing more than the mind's capacity to simulate danger. The point is not that all thoughts are empty. The point is that no thought deserves absolute authority simply because it appeared. The intrusive thought becomes tyrannical when it is given the throne. There is a difference between a mind that has dark content and a person committed to darkness. Every human being has aggressive potentials, selfish fantasies, strange associations, forbidden images, sudden doubts, absurd impulses. Civilization itself depends on the gap between mental possibility and chosen action. A person is not every passing image. A person is also what they value, what they refuse, what they repair, what they practice, what they return to after the storm. This is why the fear of intrusive thoughts can become an existential fear. It is not just, what if I do something bad? It is, what if I am bad beneath all control? What if morality is only repression? What if my goodness is fragile? What if the self I present to others is a costume? What if the thought is the real me and everything else is performance? That fear can become bottomless because the self is not a simple object you can inspect under light. You cannot open yourself and find a certificate of goodness. You cannot prove that no darkness exists in you. You cannot prove that you will never fail, never hurt, never break, never become capable of something you fear. The human condition includes uncertainty about the self, but uncertainty does not mean guilt. It means you are alive inside a mind that can imagine more than it intends. This may be the hardest thing to accept. The mind is not a moral record of desire. It is also a prediction machine, a threat simulator, an association engine, a memory field, a dream factory, a warning system that sometimes sends false alarms. If a dangerous image appears near a bridge, it may not be because you want danger. It may be because the mind understands height, speed, consequence, and loss. It simulates catastrophe because catastrophe is relevant to survival. A smoke alarm can scream when there is burnt toast. The sound is real. The fire may not be. Of course, when the alarm is inside the mind, the distinction becomes harder. You cannot simply step outside and see whether the building is burning. You are both building and alarm. So the person listens inward, hears the sound, and assumes fire. Panic follows, but panic does not prove fire. It proves alarm. This is one of the coldest facts about anxiety. The feeling of certainty can attach to an error. A thought can feel urgent and be irrelevant. A fear can feel moral and be compulsive. A doubt can feel intelligent and be repetitive. The nervous system can speak in the voice of truth while delivering a false emergency, and yet telling someone it is just a thought can feel insulting, because inside the experience, it is not just a thought. It is a thought plus terror, a thought plus shame, a thought plus bodily alarm, a thought plus the possibility of being morally exiled from yourself. Saying just can erase the suffering, but saying thought still matters. It restores the category. It places the event back where it belongs. A thought can be terrible without being authoritative. That sentence is small, but it changes the room. If the thought is authoritative, you must obey it, fight it, confess it, solve it, purify it, destroy it, prove yourself against it. If the thought is a mental event, You may still be frightened, but the task changes. You do not need to become innocent of having a mind. You need to learn how to stand near mental noise without making it king. This is not passivity. It is not saying nothing matters. It is not ignoring real risk, real harm, or real responsibility. If someone has genuine intention to harm themselves or someone else, that is different, and help matters. But intrusive thoughts, especially ego-dystonic ones, often torment people precisely because the person does not want them. The fear is not a plan. The fear is a fear. To confuse fear with intention is to punish conscience for being sensitive. That is one of the cruelest reversals. A person with a tender conscience begins suffering as if tenderness were evidence of danger. They are horrified by harm and then accuse themselves because harm could be imagined. They are devoted to morality and then treat every immoral image as proof of corruption. They want to protect others and then avoid others because protection has become entangled with panic. The mind becomes both guard and attacker. It says, "I will keep you good by making you afraid of yourself. I will keep others safe by making you disappear. I will keep your soul clean by making you inspect every stain until your life is nothing but inspection." And perhaps for a while, this feels like virtue. The person thinks, "I suffer because I care. I check because I care. I avoid because I care. I analyze because I care." And maybe care is inside it, but care that destroys the cared for life becomes something else. It becomes a ritual of fear pretending to be love. This is the point where the enemy is no longer the thought. The enemy is the relationship to the thought. A thought appears. The person kneels. The thought returns. The person builds a shrine. The thought changes costume. The person builds another shrine. Soon the inner world is filled with altars to things the person hates. What would it mean not to build the shrine? Not to celebrate the thought, not to agree with it, not to invite it, not to analyze it until dawn, just to let the mind produce a sentence and refuse to make it sacred, to say, "There is the fear again. There is the image again. There is the old accusation. There is the false trial. I do not need to solve this before I am allowed to live the next minute." This is difficult because the next minute feels contaminated. Anxiety says, "How can you continue as if nothing happened?" But maybe something did happen. A thought happened. A fear happened. An alarm happened. That is not nothing. It is also not everything. The person in the kitchen still has fruit to cut. The person on the bridge still has a road to drive. The person holding the child still has warmth in their arms. The person in prayer still has a prayer. The presence of fear does not erase the reality around it, but intrusive thoughts narrow reality. They make the entire world orbit a single possibility. The child becomes danger. The knife becomes danger. The bridge becomes danger. The self becomes danger. The mind forgets context. It forgets history. It forgets values. It forgets the thousands of actions that show who the person has chosen to be. It sees one image and calls the whole life suspect. A more honest mind would say, "This image is here, and also there is a long history of care. This doubt is here, and also there are values. This fear is here, and also there is no action. This alarm is loud, and also alarms can be wrong." Honesty is not believing the worst possible interpretation just because it hurts. Pain is not proof of truth. Sometimes people think the harsh interpretations is more honest because it is less comforting. They distrust any explanation that brings relief. If it feels kind, it must be denial. If it feels merciful, it must be an excuse. If it says the thought is not identity, it must be letting evil escape. This is the old belief that truth must always be cruel, but truth can be exact without being cruel. Exactness says, a thought appeared, fear followed. You did not choose the thought. You are choosing what to do next. Your values matter. Your history matters. The content is disturbing, and disturbing content is not the same as intention. You can take responsibility for behavior without taking blame for every mental spark. Cruelty says, this thought proves who you are. Cruelty is not more honest. It is only more violent. The demand for certainty may never be satisfied. That is the wound intrusive thoughts exploit. The mind asks for a guarantee that cannot exist, then treats the absence of guarantee as evidence of danger. It says, unless you can prove with absolute certainty that you would never do this, you must continue checking. But absolute certainty is not available to finite creatures. We live by trust, pattern, choice, probability, value, and repeated action. This is not weakness. It is the structure of human life. We cross bridges without proving the universe safe. We hold people we love without proving the mind will never produce a violent image. We speak without proving we will never say the wrong thing. We live not because all doubt is gone, but because life cannot wait for impossible certainty. The person with intrusive thoughts often waits. They wait to feel clean. They wait to feel safe. They wait to feel certain. They wait until the thought has gone for long enough to trust themselves. They wait until they have checked enough, prayed enough, analyzed enough, confessed enough, avoided enough. But the waiting becomes a life. The thought says, not yet. Not until you are pure. Not until you are sure. Not until no darkness appears. Not until you have solved the mind. But no one solves the mind. One learns to live with the mind without obeying every storm inside it. Return to the kitchen. The knife is still there. The fruit is still there. The thought has appeared. The body wants to recoil. It wants to put the knife down and review the feeling. It wants to search memory for other evidence. It wants to know whether a good person would be this afraid. It wants to make the next hour a trial. But perhaps for 1 second, another possibility opens. The sentence appears. This is a thought, not a verdict, not a command, not a prophecy, not a secret truth. A thought. A terrible one, maybe. A sticky one. A thought that hits the exact nerve of conscience. But still, a thought. That small distance may not feel like peace. It may feel like standing at the edge of a storm and refusing to run the usual direction. The fear may remain. The body may still vibrate. The mind may still ask for proof. But something has shifted. The thought is no longer the judge. It is an event passing through awareness. Maybe freedom begins there. Not in mental purity. Not in a mind that never produces darkness. Not in the impossible certification that nothing unwanted will ever appear inside you. Freedom begins when the mind loses the right to turn every unwanted image into a moral identity. This does not make you careless. It makes you more capable of living by chosen values rather than accidental noise. The person who values gentleness can act gently while fear speaks. The person who values faith can return to prayer while blasphemous noise passes. The person who values love can remain present while the mind produces absurd danger. The person who values life can keep driving across the bridge. There is something profoundly human in this. We are not pure beings with pure interiors. We are creatures with nervous systems, bodies, histories, fears, symbols, memories, impulses, and imaginations. We contain noise. We contain shadow. We contain flashes that horrify us. And still, we are not reducible to every passing fragment. Perhaps morality is not the absence of dark mental weather. Perhaps morality is the way we choose to walk while the weather moves overhead. The cloud may pass again. It probably will. Another image, another what if, another forbidden sentence, another strange flash at the wrong time. The old fear may say, "There, this proves it." But maybe slowly you stop accepting the invitation to trial. You stop treating every cloud as a confession from the sky. There may be no final moment where the mind becomes silent. A human mind may always produce strange things. It may always surprise you with what it can imagine. But a thought does not need to be answered like an accusation every time it appears. Some thoughts can be seen and left unnamed. Some can be felt and not followed. Some can be frightening and still not belong to the truth of who you are. The danger was never only that your mind could create a terrible thought. The deeper danger was that you might spend your life believing every terrible thought deserves a throne. Maybe the most frightening thing is not that the mind can show you darkness. Maybe the most frightening thing is how quickly shame can convince you that darkness passing through the mind is the same as darkness ruling the soul. And maybe the beginning of freedom is not the day the clouds stop coming, but the day you realize a black cloud can cross the sky without becoming the sky itself.